Okay, so up to Perek Mem Vav, Pasuk Aleph. Yaakov hears the news that Yosef is still alive, and he ended with Perek Mem Hey by saying, Eilcho ver'enu b'terem amos, I want to go and see him before I die. Pasuk Aleph, Vayisa Yisroel v'chol asher loi, vayovoi be'er hashava, vayizbach zevochim, le'eloi hey aviv Yitzchok. So the first pasuk, which we're going to focus on, Be'ikr, it says that Yaakov traveled along with everything that's his. He came to Be'er Sheva, where he slaughtered Zvachim to the god of his father, Yitzchak. And the obvious questions here are, okay, what's the function of these Zvachim? Why is he doing this? Why is this happening in Be'er Sheva on his way to Mitzrayim? By Yisai Yisrael, he's stopping in Be'er Sheva. And why does the pasuk say that he's bringing these Zvachim to the god of his father, Yitzchak? Why is he described that way? Okay. Now, what happens is after Yaakov does this in Be'er Sheva, the next few psukim go that Hashem appears to him, Elikim appears to him, Amaris Halaylo, introduces himself as being the God of his father. So that, of course, follows on the fact that he brought Zvachim to the God of his father. Then there's a vision at night where Elohim appears to him and says, I am the God of your father. Tells him not to be afraid. They go down to Mitzrayim. He's going to become a great nation there, and that he will go down with him and come back with him, and Yosef will put his hands on his eyes. And then Vayokom Yaakov Be'er Sheva. Okay. So we need to understand the sequence over here. What is the point of this intermission in Be'er Sheva? What does it accomplish? How does it tie into the Mara? After which Yaakov picks up from Be'er Sheva and goes. Okay, but the three questions are, why is Be'er Zvachim? What's the function of them? Why in Be'er Sheva? And why to the God of his father Yitzchak? To the question of what's the function of the Zvachim, there are two approaches in the Mefarshim. Approach number one is that the purpose of the Zvachim were to bring about a vision. So, to induce inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, prophecy. That's one approach. And the other approach is that these Zvachim were Zvachim of Toida, of thanksgiving, Zivchei Toida. Okay, that's to the question of what the function of the Zvachim are, and to the question of why Be'er Sheva and why I say to the God of his father Yitzchak. I want to mention one pirush. There are many things said about this, but I want to just mention first the Rashbam, who said something interesting, which is that it says in Perek Chavav Pasuk Chav Hey that Yitzchak built a Mizbeach there in Be'er Sheva. So therefore, Yaakov to be Zevech Zavachim to the God of Yitzchak in Be'er Sheva is very appropriate. Okay, fine. But I think this pshat is very problematic. It's incomplete. In other words, the pshat, both of those pshatim, that he brought the Zvachim in order to gain revelation, and the purpose of that was he wanted to know whether he's supposed to go down to Mitzrayim or not. He wanted to know whether Hashem wants him to go down to Mitzrayim. So he went to Be'er Sheva and he engaged in practices that were designed to bring about a vision, and succeeded. And in that vision, he was given permission to go, or told that God will be with him. That's one pshat. And the other pshat is that these are Zvachim of thanksgiving. And I think both of these pshatim are problematic because, let's say according to the first pshat, so he's on his way, he's thinking to go down to Mitzrayim. He wants to first hear what Hashem has to say about this. So he goes and he does this this Seder of bringing Karbanis, which is going to induce a Mara vision where Elikim is going to tell him what to do. The problem is the pasuk begins, Vayisa Yisrael v'chol asher loi. Now, throwing in that detail that he traveled along with everything that's with him indicates that he's moving, which he ended up doing. He went to Mitzrayim. But if at this point he's still unsure of whether he should go down to Mitzrayim, and he's waiting for a revelation that's going to clarify for him whether it's appropriate for him to go to Mitzrayim or not, then why would the pasuk say that he's traveling along with everything that's his, even before he's committed to going down to Mitzrayim? So the fact that the narrative begins here, Perek begins, Yisrael traveled along with everything that's his. That tells us he's moving. And where is he moving? Obviously to Mitzrayim. He's not moving to Beersheba. So it seems to be he's already committed to going down to Mitzrayim. So then I find it difficult to say that he's bringing Zvachim because he's trying to induce a vision where he's going to find out whether he should or should not go down to Mitzrayim. He seems to already be committed to making that move. And the same problem I have on the theory that the Zvachim are there as a Thanksgiving. Because if the Zvachim are being brought as a Thanksgiving for the great news that Yosef is still alive, why are they part of his travel? Why does it say he traveled along with everything that was his and came to Beersheba where he brought Karbanis? If the Karbanis are for Thanksgiving, then they stand apart from his travel. They're Thanksgiving for the fact that Yosef is still alive, and his travel is a different narrative, or a different part of the narrative, I should say. While the pasuk seems to put the Karbanis as being something that happens on his way to Mitzrayim when he stops in Beersheba. So why is that? Okay, now Beersheba is the southern boundary of Eretz Yisrael, considered to be like the southernmost part of Eretz Yisrael. We have psukim talk about from Dan till Beersheba, from Geva till Beersheba. Okay, so it happens to be a natural place to stop on the way down to Mitzrayim, but specifically it's the last point in Eretz Yisrael by some measures or in some descriptions. So keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind about Beersheba, another thing to look about Beersheba, I want to look what Amos has to say about Beersheba. And one of those places corresponds very directly to and explicitly to our parasha. We'll start with that one. And the other one also does, but not so directly. So let's start with the later reference in Amos, which is Perek Ches, the last pasuk in Perek Ches, which is ending the description of the hunger not for bread, but for hearing the Dvar Hashem. And it ends with saying that the girls and the boys will faint from thirst, and that thirst, of course, means the thirst of lack of the Dvar Hashem. And these people that are going to be fainting, they're nishba'im ba'ashmas shoimrin. They swear by the ashma of shoimrin. That's the god, the word idolatry that's worshipped in shoimrin. They say, by the lives of your gods, done. And by the life of the Derech Beersheba. So there's something called Derech Beersheba, the road to Beersheba, or the road of Beersheba. And that's associated with idolatry. And some people swore by it, the people that swore by idolatry. And those people, they will fall, they'll faint from hunger, I'll never get up. Okay, now this has to do with our parsha. This is Perek Ches, which you keep on going back to, but the Ra'ov Lalech B'Leitzam L'Mayim, which is actually a mashal for a hunger for the word of Hashem, is the key to understanding the hunger in Canaan, which they go down to Mitzrayim, which is really a hunger for lacking the Dvar Hashem, Nevuah, as we've been discussing since the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev. Okay. And there's something about Derech Beersheba and its association with Avodah Zarah. And we have a similar thing in Perek Hey, Pasuk Hey, in Amos. Also, a mention of all the of places that are associated with Avodah Zarah. But Al Tidushu, well, let's start from Pasuk Dalet. Seek me, and that way you will live. Don't pass by Beersheba. So notice there was Derech Beersheba, and here there's a warning not to pass by Beersheba. Okay? Instead, Dir Shurash Hashem, and that parak begins a few psukim prior to this one. But the Besulas Yisrael fell and cannot get up, will not get up again. So in end of Perek Ches, he spoke about the Besulas and the Bachurim that are going to faint and not to rise again. Those are the people that swear by Beersheba, And here too, he talks about the psuso that falls not to rise again. Nobody is making it. And warns not to pass by Beersheba. Now here Yaakov goes to Beersheba. And after he goes to Beersheba, it says, Vayokom Yaakov, right? There in Amos he says, don't go to Beersheba, you'll never get up again. Here Yaakov goes to Beersheba and Vayokom Yaakov me Beersheba. Okay. Fine. Another thing to notice. Another thing I want you to notice. What was the content of the vision to Yaakov? The message was, Anochi ered imcha mitzrayim v'anochi alcha gamol. I'm going to go down with you and I'm going to go up with you. There was another time that Yaakov was leaving Eretz Yisrael, and that's Vayetze Yaakov me Beersheba. And there he has a dream where he sees Malachi Elohim olim v'yoredim. So here there's a message, Anochi ered imcha mitzrayim v'anochi alcha gamol. And there's another time that he was leaving Eretz Yisrael. There it says Vayetze Yaakov Beersheba. With the other direction, he's going north. But there's also a Beersheba focus there. And there's a message about going up and going down. Like there is over here, Anochi ered v'anochi alcha. Based on that parallel, that suggests that the Malachi Elohim olim b'yarden bay have to do with the going up or going down into and out of Golos, which is what Chazal say, that the Malachim going up and down, there's a Malachi Eretz Yisrael who are going up, and now the Malachi Chutz La'aretz are coming down to Melavahim. So that relates to this pasuk that says Hashem is going to Melavahim on his way in and on his way out. Okay, fine. And bear with me over here. What happened over there in Vayetze is Hashem tells him, Hine anochi imoch, you're not alone. Yaakov thought that since he's leaving Eretz Yisrael, this is back in Vayetze, Yaakov thought that since he's leaving Eretz Yisrael, he is alone. Hashem is not with him outside of Eretz Yisrael. And about this, the Navi Yeshaya says in Yeshaya Perek Mem, Pasuk, Chav Zayin, and these are Psukim we spoke about then. Let me read the Psukim. Loma Somer Yaakov usidaber Yisrael nistor darki me Hashem ume Elokai mishpati ya'avar. Why do you think Hashem doesn't see you and not giving you justice? Don't you know that Hashem is the God of the world? Created the edges of the earth. So Yaakov over there is going far away. He's leaving Eretz Yisrael, and he thinks that Hashem is not with him. He wakes up and says, and really Hashem is the creator of Ktsois Haaretz, and therefore he is with Yaakov, Hine anochi imach, as he says in Vayetze. And Noisein la yoef koyach oleinon mesum rabet, v'yiyafu ne'orim v'yiga'u, u'bachurim kosher likashelu, while the Kovei Hashem yachalifu choyach ya'alu ever kanasharim yehutz v'lo yigoyich v'lo yafu. Connected this, it says in Parshas Vayetze, it says after Yaakov's dream in Beersheba, after he left Beersheba, it says Vayiso Yaakov Raglov, he was able to pick up his feet and go. And notice in our parsha we have the same message. Hashem is telling him, you're leaving Eretz Yisrael, but I'm going with you. That's what he had to be told. Same message, that Hashem is not limited to the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, but rather is Elokei Olam B'rei Ktsois Haaretz. He never wearies, so do those who hope for him. And after the vision here in Beersheba, we have Vayokom Yaakov. He gets up, like we had, and they bear him on a golus, just like in the other parasha, after his dream of Hashem telling him, Olim b'yordim, and Hine anochi imach, with the message of which is that I'm with you even when you go far away. There it says, Vayiso Yaakov Raglov. Okay, but to drill down here, the message over there, as it's expressed clearly in Yeshaya, is that Hashem is the God of the whole universe and the edges of the world. So, similarly over here, Hashem tells Yaakov, there's a big news there, that Hashem is not the local God, limited to the land of Canaan, but rather, he will go with Yaakov to Mitzrayim and back. Which means that Yaakov didn't know that. Yaakov thought that Hashem, if Hashem had to tell him, I am going to go down with you to Mitzrayim and come back with you, that means that Yaakov thought that Hashem will not go down with him to Mitzrayim. Okay? So now, with that in mind, now we can plug this back in and we can understand everything will answer all the problems. Okay, so we're working backwards. In as much as the message from Hashem was, I will go down to Mitzrayim and I will come back with you. And the key part of that message is that Hashem is not limited to space, and specifically not limited to the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, but it's everywhere. That suggests then that that's what Yaakov did not know. And if we think of that as Yaakov not knowing that, then we're going to be able to solve everything. The key, that's the key to understanding what the message of these psukim is. He's on his way to Mitzrayim. Vayavoy be'ereshava, which, as we mentioned, is the southernmost part of Eretz Yisrael, by some descriptions. Midon va'ad Be'ersheva, Megeva va'ad Be'ersheva. And since Yaakov is now leaving Eretz Yisrael, going to Mitzrayim, when he reaches Be'ersheva, which is the end of the edge of the domain of Hashem, he thinks it's a mistake. We'll soon explain clearer. He brings Zvachim to the God of his father Yitzchak as a way of departing, as a respect as he departs. And the God of his father Yitzchak then appears to him and says, Anochi Ered, I myself, that's the Anochi, I myself am going down with you. You think I'm staying here? You think I'm staying here such that when you reach Be'ersheva, you have to take leave of me and offer me Zvachim as you depart my territory? I am going down with you. And therefore, Al Tira, because Anochi Ered Imcha, I am with you. I am with you. Like Vihini Anochi Imach in Vayetze, even though you're leaving, because God is there like and like it says in Yeshaya, Parak Mem over there, it says, Al Tira ki imcha anochi. A few times it says Al Tira, like he was told here, Al Tira me'erdam Mitzrayim, because anochi ered imcha. There in Parak Mem Aleph it says, Al Tira ki imcha anochi, oni. Ani Hashem Elokecha, ha'im melecha al tira. Al tiri telas Yaakov. Okay, the message is al tira. The message to Yaakov is al tira, which, by the way, corresponds to Yaakov's Vayiro Yaakov moed vayetzeloi, despite the fact that he was promised Tina nechi imach ushmatich b'chalasha telech. Yaakov is afraid. He's not supposed to be afraid because Hashem is with him, but he is. So, what that tells us is that Yaakov didn't know Hashem properly, an old theme. Okay, was Hashem the Elokei Yaakov? Because here he brings Zvachim to the God of his father Yitzchak. Was Hashem his own God? So let's go back to Parshas Vayetze, where he says, Im yiyeh Elohim imodi yishmani b'derech hazeh asher anochi holech v'nosan li lechem lechol beged lubish v'hoyo adonai li le'Elohim v'hoeven hazeh shalti matzeva. If we read that pasuk, as I think is correct, that's part of the condition. It's all part of the condition. Meaning, if God is with me, and what's God? Elokei Avram Avicha v'Elokei Yitzchak, it says over there. And Yaakov says, Anochi lo yodati. So he didn't know Hashem. He learned Hashem is the Lekei Avram Avicha and the Lekei Yitzchak. But he's waiting for Hashem to be his God. And he says, Im yeh Elohim imodi, if he's with me. Ushmurani b'derech zeh nechelech. Nosi lech lech beged lebesh. V'shavti b'shalom beis avoy. V'hoya Hashem li Elokim Elokim. Then, v'oeven hazeh shamti matzeh v'yeh beis Elohim. If all these things happen, then he's going to make a beis Elohim, which he didn't make. That means these things didn't happen. Was Hashem the God of Yaakov? The only time you find Hashem called Elokei Yaakov, not the only time, the first time is when Hashem appears to Moshe and tells him, and the Hashem, the pasuk, Anochi Elokei Avicha, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. But till then, he's not called Elokei Yaakov. So so waiting for him to be Elokei Yaakov. Unless you think that's a small thing, just parenthetically, the Kuzri says that not everyone could say Hashem is my God. Only a Navi could say that. He says anyone else who says Hashem is my God is talking metaphorically or just connecting himself to the tradition. But it's really only the Nevi'im who say Hashem is my God. In other words, they're the ones for whom it's meaningful, a meaningful statement to say Hashem is my God. It's not simple for Hashem to be your God. And it's something that Yaakov was waiting to see if that would happen. And then he would make a Beis Elikim. Like I said, he didn't do that. Okay. So that's why it says that he brought Zvachim to the God of his father Yitzchak, because it wasn't his God. Again, what that means is he didn't fully have Das Hashem. He didn't fully understand Hashem. And because he didn't fully understand Hashem, he thought that going into exile means he's hiding from Hashem, like Yeshayahu charges him, accuses him of the crime, of the sin of saying Nistor Dakim Hashem, which, by the way, I'm not the one to say. It's a sin Chazal say. Yaakov sinned because he said Nistor Dakim Hashem. This was Yaakov's chesaron. So too, here he's saying Nistor Dakim Hashem because he doesn't know Hashem, so he thinks his derech is Nistor from Hashem. And that's why when he reaches Beersheba, he says, this is the end of Hashem's territory. Now this is something that the Navi says, don't go derech Beersheba. And don't be over Beersheba. Because then you'll never get up again. Because then you're an Oved Avodah Zarah. Because to say Hashem is limited is to not make Hashem your Elikim. And Yaakov, by slaughtering to the God of his father Yitzchak, is demonstrating that he doesn't understand Hashem. A, because it's Hashem Elikav of Yitzchak, not Hashem Elikav, and B, because he's thinking that Hashem ends there at the boundary of Beersheba, and that will make that he doesn't have a Tekuma. So, but he gets corrected because Anochi Elikav Yitzchak Avicha, Anochi Ha'el Elohe Avicha. So he's told, okay, this Elikav of Yitzchak to whom you are bringing Zvachim, that's me. And you should know that you made a mistake because Anochi Ered Imcha Mitzrayim, Anochi Alcha Gamalei. I come and go wherever you are. And since Yaakov learned that the God of his father comes and goes wherever he is, so he learned that Beersheba is not a significant place marker because Hashem goes with him into exile, so it's not like the end of Hashem's territory is Beersheba. Therefore, by Yokom Yaakov, because those who go derech Beersheba and those who are over on Beersheba, the Navi says and Omri says, they don't have a tekuma, ein mikima. But since Yaakov's error regarding Beersheba, which is the error of thinking that Hashem is limited and ends there, was corrected in the Mara, therefore by Yokom Yaakov, he had a spiritual kima from the idolatrous kind of error that he made regarding the God of his father Yitzchak. So I just want to make it clear, just bring it all together, how he answered all the questions. The questions were, what's the function of these Zvachim? Why in Beersheba and why to the God of his father Yitzchak? And the answer is, it's all part of his journey. He's going down to Mitzrayim. When he reaches the southernmost point of Etzal, he brings Zvachim to the God of his father as a way of taking leave of him. It's the God of his father, implying it's not his God, meaning he cannot yet say Hashem Elokim, implying he doesn't have full Das Hashem. It's in Beersheba, like I said, because it's the end, and because he doesn't have full Das Hashem, he has to be taught. And the fact that he brought Zvachim in Beersheba indicates he didn't have full Das Hashem, because he thinks Beersheba is where Hashem's Hashkocha ends. And really Hashem is Boik Tzei Sa'avetz. And if you make the Beersheba kind of error, you'll never get up again, says the Navi Ames. But since Yaakov's error was corrected, therefore by Yokom Yaakov. Now, I want to go back to those psukim there in Yeshayahu where it says Hashem is all over and he never wearies. And there it says also, as you read before, he gives the weary strength. The youth can become weary and exhausted, and the bachurim could stumble. B'koivei Hashem yachalifu choyach ya'alu ever kanasham yutzu v'lo yiga'u yechu v'lo yafu. So we mentioned that the koivei Hashem is Yaakov, who vayisa Yaakov raglov, he gets strength again through Hashem, and here too vayokom Yaakov b'sheva, he gets strength from the very virtue of the vision. But it contrasts physical strength that the youth have with this kind of strength that those who hope for Hashem derive from Hashem. And this, of course, parallels which is teaching us about Yosef as opposed to Yaakov, right? As you remember from the previous Shurim, Yosef is the 30-year-old young man who's and stands in front of Parai and is going to serve Parai with energy and ambition and save Mitzrayim from destruction through the might of Mitzrayim, which is symbolized by the Gvuras Asus, while Yaakov cannot even stand in front of Parai. He has to be propped up. Vayami Dehu, and he's 100 years older than Yosef. He's 130. When he appears in front of Parai, he's old, decrepit, but he brings an end to the hunger through his blessing, through calling upon Hashem. Because it's lots of most nafshach. Here too, in Yeshaya, we have this contrast between the youth and their strength and the strength of those who are Kovei Hashem. And here in Yeshaya it says, Loma Somer Yaakov Nistar Dakim Hashem. So on the one hand, there's a criticism of Yaakov, who says Nistar Dakim Hashem. On the other hand, there seems to be an approval of Yaakov's koyach that comes from Hashem. Vayisa Yaakov Raglov, Vayokom Yaakov, and he goes in Agolis, and it's a different kind of strength than the one that's associated with the youth, with Yosef. But we mentioned last week, the Medrash says that Yaakov said, Rav, O Yosef v'nichai, he said like this, Yosef is Rav koichai v'meni, because I said Nistar Dakim Hashem, and Yosef is in Mitzrayim for so long, and he's doing great, spiritually. So these same psukim that talk about Yaakov saying Nistar Dakim Hashem have a plus and a minus on the ledger for Yaakov and for Yosef. Yaakov, why do you say Nistar Dakim Hashem? That's his chasarn. His maila is that he got strength from Hashem. Yosef did not say Nistar Dakim Hashem. Rav od Yosef v'nichai. He's, as we mentioned, he's Rav Choyel. And by the way, interestingly, I see now over here, the pasuk right before Lama Somer Yaakov, it says, Su ma'orim b'neichem me'roiv oinim v'hametz koyach. So another roiv. Wow. I have to put this in the Ramazan. Okay, so Rav od Yosef v'nichai is like Ina Machnosha b'Rav Choyel Gimel Etzel b'Rav Koyach. I have to remember this, Rav Oinim. Okay, Rav Oinim is like Rav Koyach and Rav Choyel. And Rav od Yosef v'nichai is that, here we're going to put down Rav Koyach, Rav Choyel, Rav Oinim. But really, Yosef does not suffer the problem of Nistar Dakim Hashem. But then, on the other hand, he's young, but young people eventually get weary. So, is it better or is it worse? How do these two things go together? Pshat is like this. Yaakov seeks Hashem. And because he seeks Hashem, when he faces a situation of Seiser, such as going into exile, he says, Nistar Dakim Hashem. He's like, there's a problem. Hashem is not here. Yosef doesn't seek Hashem. He's not Kovei Hashem. He depends on Shoker Ish, which is to say, as we discussed, he embraces the world of Hester, and that's where he serves Hashem. He has no problem with it. So there's something good and something bad about that. On the one hand, Yosef is using the material conditions to find power, and material conditions such as Shoker Ish and youth, and those are temporary. Those fade with time. On the other hand, because he's not looking for Hashem per se, but he's looking for Hashem within these temporary structures, neither does he face shock when Hashem is not manifest. Yaakov has a plus and a minus, and Yosef has as well. Yaakov has the strength from Hashem, so therefore, when he rediscovers Hashem, he could be 130 years old. because since his koyach has nothing to do with material conditions, it has to do with Hashem, therefore it never fades. However, under the wrong circumstances, he's going to say that, oh no, I'm hidden. So that's what's happening in this psukim. It's amazing. There's plus and the minus. I want to now go on to another point. We'll probably get to the psukim Beis and Gimel here, but I want to talk a little bit about Yoshis Yodai Al Einecha. It doesn't really connect. I don't think it connects at all to what we discussed till now. I want to talk about that. Yoshis Yodai Al Einecha. He will put his hand on your eyes. Now, many say that means when a person dies and his eyes are open, so his son is supposed to close his eyes. And here he's saying Yosef will close your eyes. And now this corresponds to what Yaakov said. Let me go see him before I die. And when he saw him, he said, Amusa hapam, now I could die. So I think the fact that it's saying Yosef will put his hands on your eyes to close your eyes, it's indicating that, okay, a person dies, Yaakov is going to die with his eyes open, and Yosef is then going to put his hands on his eyes and close them. That means Yosef is going to be the last thing he sees before he dies, which is exactly what he wants. He wants to see Yosef before he dies. And once he sees Yosef, he can die. So by saying, okay, you will die and Yosef will be at your bedside and close your eyes, which were what? Which are open. Why are they open? Because they were open when you were dying. And what were you looking at? Well, you were looking at Yosef. Okay, so this is telling him that Yosef will be what he beholds. Now, there is a whole narrative of him beholding Yosef, and this is in Pashas Vayechi, when Hini Avicha Choyle, and time to go get blessings from him on his deathbed. And Perik Memches Pasuk Aleph, Yisrael says to Yosef, "Ro'ifo necha lo filolti." I didn't even expect to see your face. V'hine hera oisi Elohim gam ezarecha. So there's what he gets to see as he lays on his deathbed. And there it says that Yisrael took his min, vayoshes. He sikeles yodov and vayoshes, and Yosef saw ki yoshes aviv yad yeminoi, vayera be'enov, etc. Right? We all know the story. What I'm pointing out is that this vayosef yoshes yodoi al einecha, which is talking about the seeing at your death. We have this story about these themes about Yaakov seeing not only Yosef but even his children. And there we have the word Yoshes and Yad and Ayin. But it doesn't really, we have to figure out how it corresponds, because there it's Yaakov being Yoshes, his Yad. And that's Rabbe'ene Yosef. And here we have Yosef Yoshes Yodoi Alenecha. So the parallel is striking, but it's not the same Yoshes, it's not the same Yad, it's not the same Ayin. Unless we say it's all the same, because Yaakov vicariously lives through Yosef. Maybe that's a way to think about it, as we mentioned last week. And the whole point that Yaakov could die as soon as he sees Yosef is that, not the whole point, but a big part of it is that he's alive if Yosef is still alive. So maybe Yosef can do what he can do. Okay, we'll have to think about that. But notice in Vayechi, it says, Memches Yud Aleph, Memches Yud. He's old and he can't see. Next pasuk he says, after the pasuk says he's old and he can't see, the next pasuk says, so I said to Yosef, I didn't expect to see you, and now I even saw you there. So what do you mean he can't see? After the pasuk says he can't see, he says, I got to see you. The answer is that he says, Hera oisi Elokim, God made me, showed me. So he can't see, his eyes can't see. It means naturally he can't see. Like we learned, he doesn't have the sight that's associated with youth. But now is when he gets to see through God. God aids him to see after he can't see physically. And that tells us then that Il Chaver Enu, I will go see him, is like a prophetic vision. And this is what I want to bring out. We said last week, Il Chaver Enu was Yaakov is ready to become a seer again. And in fact, his seeing of Yosef is going to be a divine kind of seeing. And the reason why it's going to be a divine kind of seeing, and this is what I think the pasuk is saying, is Yosef will be the last thing you see, but you're going to see him in a divine way that gives you a kind of siyata d'shmaya that beyond even what you could have expected. Not only will you see, but you'll see his children, because so why Hera oisi Elokim? How is it that Hashem is making me see things? Because Hashem is here with me in Egypt. So follows, because I will go down with you to Mitzrayim. Therefore, I'm going to make you see, you're going to see through God, Hera oisi Elokim, and therefore you're going to see things that you couldn't even expect to see. And the last thing you see is going to be Yosef. And also, Yoshes Yodel is closing your eyes. Closing your eyes is associated with blindness. Of course, he's dead when his eyes are, he can't see anymore. But the point is that the same pasuk is combining seeing and not seeing, because the point is that when Yisrael is blind, that's when he can see through God's godly kind of vision. So it's a combination of a lack of physical vision and then a divine vision that comes along with that. Mamish, this theme of Kovei Hashem Yechalifu Koyach, and therefore the pshat that the Zohar talks about over here, that the dead person sees the Shechina and you have to close his eyes because they're covered of the Shechina or something, is Omek Pshat, because the person who's dying sees the Shechina means that at the time that you can't see anything else, that's when you're most able to see the Shechina. And that's exactly the point of this pasuk, that when Yisrael becomes blind, is when he can actually see. And when he goes down to Mitzrayim, he's going to see in a divine way, Dafkin Mitzrayim. Why? Because Anochi Eredim Mitzrayim.